The Red Pyramid, continuation of Chapter 7. Would you come to life and try and kill him? Had he made you perfectly? Probably, Doughboy admitted. Are we done? Not by half, I said. What happened to our dad? Doughboy shrugged. How should I know? But I see his wand and staff aren't in the box. No, Carter said. The staff, the thing that turned into a snake, it got incinerated. And the wand... Is that boomerang thing? The boomerang thing? Doughboy said. Gods of eternal Egypt, you're dense. Of course that's his wand. It got shattered, I said. Tell me how, Doughboy demanded. Carter told him the story. I wasn't sure that was the best idea, but I supposed a 10-centimeter tall statue couldn't really do that much harm. This is wonderful, Doughboy cried. What? I asked. Is Dad still alive? No, Doughboy said. He's most certainly dead. The 5 gods of the demon days released? Wonderful! And anyone who duels with the Red Lord... Wait, I said. I order you to tell me what happened. Ha ha ha, Doughboy laughed. I only have to tell you what I know. Making educated guesses is a completely different task. I declare my service fulfilled. With that, he turned back to lifeless wax. Wait! I picked him up again and shook him. Tell me your educated guesses. Nothing happened. Maybe he's got a timer, Carter said. Like only once a day, or maybe we broke him. Carter, make a helpful suggestion. What do we do now? He looked at the 4 ceramic statues on their pedestals. Maybe other Shabadi? It's worth a shot. If the statues were answerers, they weren't very good at it. We tried holding them while giving them orders, though they were quite heavy. We tried pointing at them and shouting. We tried asking nicely. They gave us no answers at all. I grew so frustrated I wanted to hadi them into 1,000,000 pieces. But I was still so hungry and tired. I had the feeling that spell would not be good for my health. Finally, we decided to check the cubbyholes round the walls. The plastic cylinders were the kind you might find at a drive-through bank. The kind that shoot up and down the pneumatic tubes. Inside each case was a papyrus scroll. Some looked new. Some looked thousands of years old. Each canister was labeled in hieroglyphs and, fortunately, in English. The Book of Heavenly Cow, Carter read one. What kind of name is that? What have you got? The Heavenly Badger? No, I've got the Book of Slaying Apophis. Muffin meowed in the corner. When I looked over to her, her tail was puffed up. What's wrong with her? I asked. Apophis was a giant snake monster, Carter murmured. He was bad news. Muffin turned and raced up the stairs, back into the great room. Cats. Just no accounting for them. Carter opened another scroll. Hey, Sadie, look at this. He'd found a papyrus that was quite long, and most of the text on it seemed to be lines of hieroglyphs. Can you read any of this? Carter asked. I frowned at the writing, and the odd thing was, I couldn't. Except I could read just a tiny one line at the top. Only that bit where the title should be, and it says, Blood of the Great House. What does that mean? Great House, Carter mused. What do the words sound like in Egypt? Pero? Oh, it's Pharaoh, isn't it? But I thought Pharaoh was a king. It is, Carter said. The word literally means great house, like the king's mansion. Sort of like referring to the president as the White House. So it probably means more like blood of the pharaohs. All of them. The whole lineage of all the dynasties, and not just one guy. So, why do I care about the pharaoh's blood, and why can't I read any of the rest? Carter stared at the lines. Suddenly his eyes widened. Because they're names. Look, they're all written inside cartouches. Excuse me? I asked because cartouche sounded like a rather rude word, and I pride myself on knowing those. The circles, Carter explained. They symbolize magic ropes. They're supposed to protect the holder of the name from evil magic. He eyed me, and possibly also from other magicians reading their names. Oh, you're mental, I said, but I looked at the lines and saw what he meant. All the other words were protected by cartouches, and I couldn't make sense of any of them. Sadie, Carter said, his voice rather urgent. He pointed to a cartouche at the very end of the list, the last entry in what looked to be a catalogue of thousands. Inside the circle were two simple symbols, a basket and a wave. K-N, Carter announced. I know this one. It's our name, Cain. Missing a few letters, isn't it? Carter shook his head. Egyptians usually didn't write vowels, only consonants. You have to figure out the vowel's sound from context. They really were nutters, so that could be con, icon, knee, acne. It could be, Carter agreed, but it's our name, Cain. I asked Dad to write it for me in hieroglyphics once, and that's how he did it. But why are we on the list? And what is blood of the pharaohs? The icy tingle started on the back of my neck. I remember what Amos had said about both sides of our family being very ancient. Carter's eyes met mine, and judging from his expression, he was having the same thought. There's no way, I protested. Must be some kind of joke, he agreed. Nobody keeps family records that far back. I swallowed, my throat suddenly very dry. So many odd things happened to us in that last day. But it was only when we saw our names in that book that I finally began to believe all this madness about Egyptian stuff was real. Gods, magicians, monsters, and our family was tied onto it. Ever since breakfast, when it occurred to me that Dad had been trying to bring Mum back from the dead, a horrible emotion had been trying to take hold of me. And it wasn't dread. Yes, the whole idea was creepy, much creepier than the shrine of my grandparents kept in the hall cupboard to my dead mother. And yes, I told you, I try not to live in the past, and nothing could change the fact that Mum was gone, but I'm a liar. The truth was, I'd had one dream ever since I was 6, to see my mom again. To actually get to know her, talk to her, go shopping, do anything. Just be with her once, so I could have a memory of her to hold on to. The feeling I was trying to shake was hope. I knew I was setting myself up for a colossal hurt, but if it really were possible to bring her back, then I would have blown up any number of Rosetta Stones to make that happen. Let's just keep looking, I said. After a few more minutes, I found a picture of some animal-headed god, 5 in a row, with starry women figures arching over them protectively like an umbrella. Dad had at least 5 gods, though. Carter, I called. What's this, then? He came to have a look, and his eyes lit up. That's it, he announced. These 5. And up here, their mother. Nut. I laughed. A goddess named Nut? Is her last name Case? Very funny, Carter said. She was the goddess of the sky. He pointed to the painted ceiling, the lady with the blue star-spangled skin, same as in the scroll. What about her? I asked. Carter knit his eyebrows. Something about demon days. It had to do with the birth of these 5 gods, but it's been a long time since Dad told me the story. The whole scroll is written in hieratic, I think. That's hieroglyphic cursive. Can you read it? I shook my head. Apparently, my particular brand of insanity only applied to regular hieroglyphics. I wish I could find the story in English, Carter said. Just then there was a cracking noise behind us. The empty-handed clay statue hopped off his pedestal, marched toward us. Carter and I scrambled to get out of his way, but he walked straight past us, grabbed a cylinder from the cubbyhole, and brought it to Carter. It's a retrieval Shabadi, I said. A clay librarian. Carter swallowed nervously and took the cylinder. Thanks. The statue marched back to his pedestal, jumped on, and hardened again into regular clay. I wonder... I faced the Shabadi. Sandwich and chips, please. Sadly, none of the statues jumped down to serve me. Perhaps food wasn't allowed in the library. Carter uncapped the cylinder and unrolled the papyrus. He sighed with relief. Haha, this version is in English. As he scanned the text, his frown got deeper. You don't look too happy, I noticed. Because I remember the story now. The 5 gods. If Dad really released them, this isn't good news. Hang on, I said. Start from the beginning. Carter took a deep and shaky breath. Okay. So, the sky goddess Nut was married to the earth god Geb. That would be this chap on the floor? I tapped my foot on the big green man with the river and hills and forest all over his body. Right, Carter said. Anyway, Geb and Nut wanted to have kids, but the king of the gods, Ra, he was the sun god, heard this bad prophecy that the child of Nut... child of Nut, I snickered. Sorry, go on. A child of Geb and Nut would one day replace Ra as king. So when Ra learned that Nut was pregnant, Ra freaked out. He forbade Nut to give birth to her children on any day or night of the year. I crossed my arms. So what, she had to stay pregnant forever? That's awful. Carter shook his head. Nut figured out a way. She set up a game of dice with the moon god Khons. Every time Khons lost, he had to give Nut some of his moonlight. So, he lost so many times that Nut won enough moonlight to create 5 new days and tag them on to the end of the year. Okay, I said. First, how do you gamble moonlight? And if you did, how could you make extra days out of it? It's just a story, Carter protested. Anyway, the Egyptian calendar had 360 days in the year, just like 360 degrees in a circle. Nut created 5 days and added them to the end of the year, days that were not part of the regular year. The demon days, I guessed. So the myth explains why a year has 365 days, and I suppose she had her children. During those 5 days, Carter agreed, 1 kid per day. Again, how do you have 5 children in a row on a different day? They're gods, Carter said. They can just do stuff like that. Makes as much sense as the name Nut, but whatever, please go on. Carter continued. So when Ra found out, he was furious, but it was too late. The children were already born. Their names were Osiris. Oh, I interrupted, the one Dad's after. Carter continued. Then Horus, Set, Isis, and, Carter consulted his scroll. Nephthys. I always forget that one. And the fiery man in the museum said, You have released all 5. Exactly. What if they were imprisoned together, and Dad just didn't realize it? They were born together, so maybe they had to be summoned back into the world together. The thing is, one of these guys, Set, well, he was a really bad dude. Like the villain in all Egypt mythology. The god of evil and chaos and desert storms. I shivered. Did he perhaps have something to do with fire? Carter pointed to one of the figures in the picture. The god had an animal head, but I couldn't quite make out what kind of animal. Dog? Anteater? Some sort of evil bunny rabbit? Whatever. It was his hair and his clothes that were bright red. The Red Lord, I said. There's more, Sadie, Carter continued. Those 5 days, the demon days, They were bad luck in Egypt. You had to be careful, wear good luck charms, and do not do anything important or dangerous in those days. And, in the British Museum, Dad told Set they'll stop you before the demon days are over. Surely you don't think he meant us, I said. We're supposed to stop the Set guy? Carter nodded. And if the last 5 days of our calendar year still count as Egyptian demon days, they'd start December 27th, the day after tomorrow. The Shabari seemed to be staring at me expectantly, but I had not the slightest idea what to do. Demon days and evil bunny gods, if I had one more impossible thing, my head would explode. And the worst of it, the little insistent voice in the back of my head kept saying, "It's not impossible. To save Dad, we must defeat Set." And if that had to be my to-do list for Christmas hauls, whew. See Dad, check. Develop strange powers, check. Defeat an evil god of chaos, check. Ugh, this whole idea was mad. Suddenly there was a loud crash, as if something had broken in the great room. Khufu began barking in alarm. Carter and I locked eyes and ran up the stairs. Chapter 8. Muffin Plays with Knives. Our baboon was going completely Sky Goddess, which is to say, nuts. He swung from column to column, bouncing along the balconies, overturning pots and statues. Then he ran back to the terrace windows, stared outside for a moment, and proceeded to go berserk again. Muffin was also at the window. She crouched on all fours, with her tail twitching as if she were stalking a bird. "Perhaps it's just a passing flamingo," I suggested hopefully. But I'm not sure Carter could hear me over the screaming baboon. We ran to the glass door. At first, I didn't see any problem. Then water exploded from the pool, and my heart nearly jumped out of my chest. 2 enormous creatures, most definitely not flamingos, were thrashing about with our crocodile, Philip of Macedonia. I couldn't make out what they were, only that they were fighting Philip 2 against 1. They disappeared under the boiling water, and Khufu ran screaming through the great room again, bonking himself on the head with his empty Cheerio box, which I must say was not really helpful. "Long necks," Carter said incredulously. "Sadie, did you see those things?" I couldn't find an answer. Then one of the creatures was thrown out of the pond. It slammed into the doors right in front of us, and I jumped back in alarm. On the other side of the glass was the most terrifying animal I had ever seen. Its body was like a leopard's, lean and sinewy, with golden spotted fur, but its neck was completely wrong. It was green and scaly, and at least as long as the rest of its body. It had a cat's head, but not a normal cat's. When it turned its glowing red eyes toward us, it howled, showing its forked tongue and fangs dripping with green venom. I realized my legs were shaking, and I was making a very undignified whimpering sound. The cat serpent jumped back in the pool to join its companion in beating up Philip, who spun and snapped but seemed unable to hurt the attackers. "We have to help Philip," I cried. "He'll be killed!" I reached for the door handle, but Muffin growled at me. Carter snapped, "Sadie, no! You heard Amos. We can't open the doors for any reason. The house is protected by magic. Philip will have to beat him on his own." "But what if he can't?" "Philip!" The old crocodile turned. For a second, his pink reptilian eye focused on me as if he could sense my concern. Then, the cat-snake thing bit at his underbelly. Philip rose up so that only the tip of his tail still touched the water. He began to glow. A low hum filled the air, like an airplane engine starting up. When Philip came down, he slammed into the terrace with all his might. The entire house shook. Cracks appeared in concrete terrace outside, and the swimming pool split right down the middle as the far end crumbled into empty space. No! I cried. But the edge of the terrace ripped free, plunging Philip and the monsters straight into the East River. My whole body began to tremble. He sacrificed himself. He killed the monsters. Sadie. Carter's voice was faint. What if he didn't? What if they come back? Don't say that. I recognized them, Sadie, those creatures. Come on. Where? I demanded, but he ran straight back to the library. Carter marched up to the Shabadi who'd helped us before. Bring me the... God, what's it called? What? It was something Dad showed me. It's a big stone plate or something. It had a picture of the first pharaoh, the guy who united Upper and Lower Egypt into one kingdom. His name was, Suddenly his eyes lit up. Narmer! Bring me Narmer plate! Nothing happened. No, Carter decided, not a plate. It was one of those things that hold paint. Oh, a pallet! A pallet! Bring me the Narmer pallet! The empty-handed Shabadi didn't move, but across the room, the statue with the little hook came to life. He jumped off his pedestal and disappeared in a cloud of dust. A heartbeat later, he reappeared on the table. At his feet was a wedge of flat gray stone, shaped like a shield and about as long as a forearm. No, Carter protested. I meant a picture of it. Oh, great. I think this is the real artifact. The Shabadi must have stolen it from a Cairo museum. We've got a... Hang on, I interrupted. We might as well have a look at it. The surface of the stone was carved with the pictures of a man smashing another man in the face with what looked like a spoon. That's Narmer with the spoon, I guessed. Angry because the other bloke stole something from him? Maybe his breakfast cereal? Carter shook his head. He's conquering his enemies and uniting Egypt. See his hat? That's the crown of Lower Egypt, before the two countries united. The bit that looks like a bowling pin? Oh, God, you're impossible, Sadie, Carter grumbled. Hey, he looks like Dad. Sadie, be serious. I am serious. Look at him. Carter decided to ignore me. He examined the stone like he was afraid to touch it. I need to see the back, but I don't really want to turn it over. We might damage it. I grabbed the stone and flipped it over. Sadie, you could have broken it! Well, I mean, I have spells for mending, right? He examined the back of the stone, and I had to admit I was impressed by Carter's memory. Two cat-snake monsters stood in the center of the pallet, their necks entwined. On either side, Egyptian men with ropes were trying to capture the creatures. They're called serpopards. Serpopards, Carter stuttered. Serpent leopards. Fascinating. But what are serpopards? No one knows exactly. Dad thought they were creatures of chaos. Very bad news. And they've been around forever. This stone is one of the oldest artifacts from Egypt. Those pictures were carved 5,000 years ago. Last night in Phoenix, the fiery man ordered his servants to capture us. He said to send the long necks first. I had a metallic taste in my mouth, and I wished I hadn't chewed my last piece of gum. Well, good thing they're at the bottom of the East River. Just then, Khufu rushed into the library, screaming and slapping his head. I guess I shouldn't have said that, I muttered. Carter told the Shabadi to return the Narmer plate, and both statue and stone disappeared. Then, we followed the baboon upstairs. Tune in next week for the thrilling continuation.